Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking all about short books. So I am going to give you 10 short book recs, and I just feel like now is the perfect time to talk about short books because as we're getting into this kind of middle portion of the year, I feel like a lot of us will be kind of like checking in on our reading goals, see how we're doing all of these mid-year catch-up, mid-year book tags, etc. So if you are looking at your list of books that you've read so far this year and you're kind of feeling like you might be a little bit behind on your reading goal, get comfy, grab a snack, because today we're going to be talking about 10 short books that I think pack a punch in a small amount of pages, but these will also help you catch up on your reading goal if you do feel like you're falling behind. So I have my book stack here. These books range from like 30 pages long to 100 pages long to 300 pages long, but we don't get too much longer than that. So get out your TBR lists. Maybe you can add some of these to your more immediate TBR. First things first though, speaking of priority, goals, and all of that, I do want to talk about something that can further help productivity and all of that. And as someone who has transitioned to working for myself full-time with content creation, with freelance work that I do as well, I am always looking for tools that will make my life easier, more seamless, and just tools that will streamline my day-to-day so I can actually focus on creating the content, on creating the work I want to create, rather than spending all of my time on menial, repetitive tasks day to day. And that is where Brevo comes in. So I do want to thank Brevo for sponsoring this video. Brevo is the go-to all-in-one platform for growing businesses, and they help you achieve smarter customer relations as well as marketing and sales. They offer these incredible tools like email marketing, automation, SMS, landing pages, sign-up forms, CRM, sales pipeline, and so much more. It's also an affordable option, which we love as small growing businesses. There is actually a very generous free plan, and when you upgrade, it actually works as pay as you go. So it's flexible pricing, and it's based on things like the actual volume of emails sent versus how big your contact list is. It's also super easy to use, very, very intuitive. You don't have to be a tech wizard to know how to use it. It's very, very intuitive and smooth and easy to use. Brevo is also proven to be very reliable, so your messages will reach the right people at the right time when you need them to. And they also prioritize privacy and security, which we all know is so important to any business, really. Brevo currently has hundreds of thousands of clients online, helping so many businesses thrive. So if you are an entrepreneur, a small business owner, a freelancer, a marketing exec, or more, definitely check out Brevo. Highly recommend them if you are in need of more intuitive tools that will help you launch, scale, and manage your business. And of course, I have a wonderful discount code for you to use. So if you do want to check out Brevo, you can use my code JamieF50. This will get you 50% off the starter and standard plans for the first 3 months, and also the link will be in my description box below. Thank you so much again to Brevo for sponsoring this video. We always love tools and platforms that will help small businesses, freelancers, all of us creatives kind of launch and thrive. So definitely check them out. But for now, let's get into our short book recs. Okay, so my first 2 short book recs today are both ebooks. So the first one, and this is actually the shortest book of the bunch, is The 6 Deaths of the Saint by Alix Harrow. This book is 30 pages long. It's fully a one-sitting book. It is beautiful, it is easy to read, but it also does pack quite an emotional punch for 30 pages. This is a fantasy short story. It feels very mythical. It feels very fairy tale. We essentially follow a saint who is caught in this time loop, and as we iterate through these loops, we see kind of these subtle differences between all of them, and we also see the journey of how she, one day maybe manages to break out of this time loop and change her fate, because currently in every single one of her time loops, she becomes this very, very renowned, legendary knight. But in every iteration of her life, she finds herself being sacrificed to save the king. And so I don't want to say too much about the story because it's only 30 pages long, so there's only so much you can say without actually just giving away everything that happens. But what I will say is it's a beautiful short story. I feel like this is honestly my favorite Alix Harrow book that I've ever read, and it's the shortest book from her that I've ever read, but the writing is just perfectly balanced with lyrical, but also really tells you a story without like too much fluff. Obviously there's no fluff, it's only 30 pages long, and I absolutely loved it so much. The way Alix E. Harrow kind of like presented this bond between characters that felt so real and strong with so few words, I think was absolutely impressive. So if you didn't know, this is actually the short form story that inspired the full-length novel by Alix E. Harrow, The Everlasting. And I'm gonna be completely honest, I didn't fully love The Everlasting. I thought it was honestly a little bit boring. I did think that one dragged on for a little bit too long, but this short story is where it's at. In fact, this short story affected me more emotionally than the full-length novel version did. So Success of the Saint, definitely an incredible short story. Short book number 2, The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren. This one is just about 100 pages long. Again, only available in ebook, but this one is a short story, contemporary romance novella that I think, again, just packed a punch in very few pages. So this one is based and set kind of around Valentine's Day. We have two characters that have by accident connected with each other through email. Basically, one of them wanted to contact their professor, I'm pretty sure, like send an email to the professor, but made a typo. Like when they were typing in the recipient email address, made a typo. So this email went to another student by accident. And this happens on Valentine's Day. So we're kind of like, haha, oops, like can't believe I did that. They kind of have a little bit of back and forth and then kind of forget about it. It was just kind of a fluke incident that happened. But then the next year, they actually email each other again. And this becomes this annual tradition where every Valentine's Day, they have a little bit of this email exchange with one another. And this goes on for many, 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 many years. And they have never actually met each other in person. They don't actually know who the other person is. But after all of these years of, you know, emailing once a year, but kind of like getting these little sneak peeks, little glimpses into each other's personalities and lives, they feel like they're kind of close with one another. And as we go through the story, we see if they maybe someday actually meet in person. Again, not gonna say too much, but it's a contemporary romance, so you know the outcome's not entirely unpredictable. But I just found the way that this story was told through emails, like, you guys know I eat that up. I love emails, letters, any type of correspondence. I feel like this medium just gives you the perfect little glimpse into someone's life, little glimpse into how they're feeling, how they interact with one another. Because when you're sending emails or letters, I feel like you feel the freedom to be a little bit more vulnerable because you're not talking to this person face to face, but also at the same time, you can kind of self-edit yourself a little bit more. Like you can look over your email, you can erase certain things you've written that you're like, oh, maybe I don't want to share that. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of us are a little bit braver when it comes to text interaction, text correspondence versus in-person face-to-face correspondence. So I always find it's just such a fun dynamic reading about two characters interacting in this way. And honestly, I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed this short story. I thought it was just going to be like, you know, I'll read it. It's going to be a fun time, a fun short time, whatever. But I honestly think this one holds up. And I honestly think this one reads stronger than a lot of full-length contemporary romance books. So if you're looking for a cute little vibe, definitely recommend The Exception to the Rule. Okay, let's get into the physical short books now. On the top of my stack, can't do a short books video without including this one, The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. This one is 258 pages long, and this one is a contemporary fiction. We follow this grumpy man. At first, I thought he was kind of old, like an old grumpy man when I first started reading this book, but soon figured out he's not like that old. I think he's 30, maybe 40 at most. I can't remember his exact age, but at the beginning of the story, he is, let's just say, not at the peak of his life. So he owns a bookstore, which we love. He also lives in an apartment above the bookstore, which we also love, but he is still grieving the loss, the death of his wife, and his bookstore's not doing very well. And just, you know, it's one of those situations where all of this life stuff piles on you at once. So he's not doing very well, but at the beginning of the story, a book, like a publisher's sales rep, comes to visit his store to try and, you know, sell books to him, to sell in his store. She's very much lively. She's the sunshine to his grumpy. And also at the beginning of the story, he gets kind of a surprise dropped into his bookstore apartment combo. And this surprise arrival kind of instigates this emotional growth journey for him and kind of acts as the trigger for him to, you know, step into his life again, introduce color and life and happiness back into his, aura, into his bubble. And this story just touched me so deeply. It's emotional. We get a lot of lovely interaction between him and others around him, and also we get a lot of inner development. There is a little bit of a romance plotline in this, but I wouldn't call this a romance. It's definitely a fiction with just a romance subplot in it. But I will say this romance subplot had no place in being as good as it was. The banter in this book was absolutely unreal. It was so unexpected, for a story that focuses so much on kind of personal development and also focuses on the community around you. There was some really great banter in this book, but it kind of had all you would want in a contemporary fiction, all stuffed into one little short book. So we had humor, we did have the romance, we also have this mystery subplot because there's something that actually goes missing at the beginning of the story, and we kind of have to figure out like where it went, who took it. So there is a little bit of mystery involved as well, which I think just adds some extra intrigue to everything. So definitely will recommend this every day, all day, whenever anyone asks for a short book. Next up, I actually read this a little while ago, but I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This one is 164 pages. This is a dystopian literary fiction. So we follow this young girl, and her entire life has been lived in this sort of bunker, I want to say. She basically lives in this cage that's underground, and she lives in there with 39 other women. So she is the 40th person who lives in this cage, and she is also the youngest, and she really has no knowledge of the outside world. She grew up in this cage her entire life. All of her memories are in this cage, and she has no recollection of what went on in the outside world. But all of the other women around her are a little bit older, so some of them maybe, witnessed things on the outside, maybe know a little bit more than her. So we definitely have this feeling of, something eerie happening, something weird, something, honestly really terrible and horrific. But as we go through the story, we see how this group of women kind of like just form this society of their own. We see how they kind of self-organize into this kind of contained society, and we see if this group can, kind of free themselves, go back to the outside world, find out what is still out there. And that's all I'm going to tell you about this one. This story, like throughout the entire book, stays kind of very vague and mysterious throughout. Even at the end of this book, you still really don't know what happened, and you still really don't know exactly, you don't get explanations for everything that has happened. But I feel like where the strengths of this book lie are seeing those interactions between these women, seeing how they acted when they were kind of isolated by themselves, and see how they acted when some of them maybe had a little bit of hope, see how some of them acted when, it seemed like the end of everything, and like some of them gave up, some of them kept going, some of them took the lead to start organizing things. I think this was just a very interesting deep dive into humanity, and I think Jacqueline Harpman did a great job with that. So that was I Who Have Never Known Men. All right, next little book, Small Things Like These by Keegan. This was more of a recent read for me, and this one is a teeny tiny little one. It is 114 pages, but when I tell you it's a short 114 pages, like this book physically, like height, width, lengthwise, very small, and also the font and margins and spacing, huge. Okay, but this one is another literary fiction. It also honestly gives a lot of insight into just subtle things about what it is to be a human. So in this one, we're set in a small town in Ireland, and it is very wintry. It's definitely a little bit more of a winter read in my opinion. I know we're in the middle of summer, I'm sorry, but we're set in 1985, and we follow this man. He's a coal merchant, and we just kind of follow him as he exists in the small town almost. This town is very kind of reliant, very dependent. They really look up to religion and the church. And as Bill goes out, delivering coal to everyone as the coal merchant, he actually makes this very disturbing discovery when he's at the convent delivering coal to them. And we just see how he deals with it. We see how, the small town can be so complicit to a power like the church, and how they can get away with a lot of things because everyone just decides to stay silent about them. We see how Bill struggles internally with this, and follow as he decides, if he wants to confront this, if he wants to come face to face with this, or if he's just going to be like everyone else in the town, let it slide, stay silent. And I thought the story was so powerful. I read it in one sitting, but it did stick with me for, a couple days, a couple weeks as I kind of mulled over what happened and kind of the meaning behind everything that happened in here. This story to me was very much about small things, the small things like these, as the title says, but kind of like small ways that you can act. Like you don't have to necessarily be this loud hero of everything, but you can help, you can make a difference, even if you feel like your actions are small and they're maybe not, you know, changing the masses and affecting the world in big ways. You can still help in small ways, and those small things you do can still be so powerful and still be so impactful on other people's lives. So lots to think about this one. The writing is also beautiful, atmospheric. Really love this one a lot. Okay, next one. This one's the longest one so far of the batch, but still a short book. I have Welcome to the Hyunam-Dong Bookshop by Hwang Bo-Reum. This, every time I think about this book or talk about this book, I just think of how much it healed my soul. So I think this would be a great one for you if you want to, number one, obviously read a short book to get ahead of your reading goal, or if you feel like you're in a reading slump. This one, for page count, for reference, is 297 pages, so just under the 300 page mark. But this one follows a woman who, at the beginning of the story, she feels very burnt out from her job, from everything, and she has decided to drop her, you know, really high stressful but successful career, leave her stressful life behind, move to this small town in Korea, and open a bookshop in this small, very cute, quaint neighborhood. And that's basically the plot of the story. We follow her as she kind of ponders things like, how do I make my bookshop more cozy? How do I make my bookshop more inviting? What types of books do I want to sell in my bookshop? We see her as she sets up a book club. We see as, you know, she starts getting regulars in the bookshop. So we start getting these kind of main secondary characters that, you know, show up as regulars throughout the book. And it's just so healing. It's truly just so healing. You guys know this, but I had, you know, a really rough year in my career where I did work in a very like fast-paced, toxic moving industry, and I was feeling burnt out. I was feeling mistreated. I was feeling just like, you know, not respected for all of the work that I was doing. And then my industry went through this really, really terrible time where companies were going bankrupt. We had mass layoffs every other day. You know, I feel like a lot of industries have kind of gone through this over the past few years, but I was just feeling so dejected, so burnt out from everything that was happening. And I did have to go through this transition period of healing and kind of finding, you know, my passion for work again. And I feel like we had a lot of talk about that in this book, like kind of what do you want to prioritize in life? What do you want to prioritize in your work life versus your personal life? And this just healed so much inside of my soul. So another book that I will recommend always, especially if you're feeling burnt out, especially if you're feeling kind of slumpy. I feel like this one will help a lot of people out there just feel better. So that's Welcome to the Hyunam-Dong Bookshop. We have another contemporary romance next. So this one is actually YA and it's by Liang. This one is I Hope This Doesn't Find You. For page count, we're sitting at 309 pages, but this one is essentially To All the Boys I always mess that title up. To All the Boys I've Loved Before, To All the Boys I've... What is it called? You know, it's that book that's written by that author, but it's also adapted into TV on Netflix, To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Lara Jean, you know what I mean. This one is kind of that, but hate emails instead of love letters. So our main character, Sadie, is in high school and she's just kind of this perfect student. She's, you know, she's on track to be valedictorian. She's like top of her class. She's doing actually incredible, but kind of under her perfect exterior, she has this collection of emails sitting in her drafts where, you know, whenever she feels kind of this rage against people or the world, she types out these emails directed to people that have, you know, kind of wronged her, but she never sends them. They're, you know, they're just kind of a way of getting her feelings out there. But one day, of course, these emails somehow find themselves sent. And now Sadie needs to deal with the repercussions of, you know, all of her kind of like hate and frustrations and, you know, private venting out feelings. Now they're all out in public and they've been sent to the people that she kind of like directed them to, but never planned on actually telling them. And the worst part of all of this is the majority of those hate emails were actually directed towards Julius, who is like her academic rival. They've always kind of flip-flopped between first and second in their class. And now life is just, you know, very, very chaotic. Her very curated outer appearance to everyone is now kind of, you know, ruined, tarnished, because everyone's seeing her kind of ugly thoughts that she was supposed to keep to herself. And we see how she deals with this alongside Julius, of course. So I thought this was really cute, kind of a good brain off read, but in the best way. That's I Hope This Doesn't Find You. You know what? I probably also should have put This Time It's Real by Anne Liang in this list, because that's actually my favorite Anne Liang YA contemporary romance, and that's also a short book. So if you read this and you're like, I want another one, go with This Time It's Real. That one's like a cute fake dating situation. All right, number 7. The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. If you haven't read this book yet, read this book. Please read this book. So this one is 281 pages, but it's a very quick 281 pages, because we all know this at this point, but this story is told entirely through letters. And so while we do have some letters that, you know, span a couple of pages long, some of the letters take up like one sentence and literally fill up just like a tenth of the page. And so I feel like in terms of word count, this is a very quick 281 pages. Just in case you're not familiar with the plot synopsis yet, we basically follow this woman named Sybil. She is in her 70s, and we just see her correspondence with the people around her. So we'll see her as she writes letters to her friends, to her family, to kind of like random people she reaches out to. We see her emails that she writes to, you know, tech support and stuff like that. And throughout this collection of letters, we get this very intimate glimpse into her life. It's a story where we see this surprising growth of, you know, an older character, where you wouldn't expect someone of that age to really make that much personal growth in that stage of life. We really see Sybil transform through the story. And what I found was really surprising about this is how much plot was in this book. I didn't know what to expect going into a story like this, but throughout these chains of letters, we actually got quite a coherent plot, a continuous story through these kind of letters that, you know, maybe spanned over a long period of time. Like sometimes you would see a letter and then we wouldn't get a reply for another like 3 months. So while it's a book where you kind of have to fill in the blanks on your own, I feel like there was actually quite a coherent plot that surprised me in this book, that pulled me in, that really engaged me. And there are some surprising interactions in this book that will just make your heart melt, that will soften all of, you know, all of the walls and the shields and the, you know, that you build up within your body. This is a book about, you know, it's a love letter to letter writing. It's a love letter to kind of like letting people in and reevaluating how you think of other people and how you think of life. And it's so good. It's so good. Made me sob. Loved it so much. Okay, you're gonna have to hear me out on this next one, because clearly this is not a short book. It's very, very long, and it's a Brandon Sanderson. But this is the Arcanum Unbounded, and while this book sits at around 750 pages, this is actually made up of a bunch of short stories. It is a collection of novellas. So this short book rec won't apply to everyone, but if you are someone who is in the middle of reading the Cosmere, I would recommend picking up a copy of the Arcanum Unbounded, because as you move through the Cosmere, there are kind of these short stories, these novellas that you unlock as you read things. So it's like if you've read Mistborn, there are a couple of novellas that unlock in here. If you've read the Stormlight Archive, there are some more novellas that you unlock in here. If you've read his other Cosmere books, like you can kind of start making your way through these short stories. And these stories range from, some of them are like 20 pages long, some of them are 100 pages long, some of them are like 150 pages long, but they are all quite short. And so if you are in the middle of the Cosmere and you're like, I don't want to read another 1,000-page book right now, but I want to read more Brandon Sanderson, there are probably several short stories that you could kind of dive into and choose as options in here. There actually is one that I in particular want to read in this called The Emperor's Soul. I've had that one recommended to me quite a bit, and that one is like 112 pages long. And you can kind of see there's a table of contents. You can kind of see like which short stories relate to which Cosmere series. So you can see kind of like the Mistborn ones. There's Mistborn Secret History in here. There are also online guides, of course, made by readers where they recommend the order of like where in the Cosmere you read these short stories, depending on what you've read before. So definitely something great to have. I've only read one of the short stories in this so far, but I definitely want to dive more into some of these now that I'm finished the Stormlight Archive. But yeah, this one is definitely a great one to have on hand if you are a Brandon Sanderson fan and you're looking for more of his writing, but like not necessarily one of his tomes to read. And for our last short book, this one is Shark Heart by Emily Habeck. So you may be thinking this one doesn't necessarily look very thin. I think this one is just over 400 pages. Yes, it is 405 pages, But when I tell you, similar to the Correspondent, I feel like in terms of word count and how filled these pages are, it's actually a short read. Like if you compiled everything and left out all the blank spaces on the pages, I feel like this would be closer to a 300-page read, because as you can see, like this page is barely filled. As you flip through, you'll see more pages that are barely filled. I'm literally just flipping to random pages. Like there are so many pages that are just a quarter way filled. So the story does go by really quick. Like look how few words are on this page. There are like 4 sentences on these 2 pages combined. So for me, it definitely was a quick read and such an interesting premise. So this one is a literary fiction. We follow a married couple, but in this alternate version of our world, we have this phenomenon where people are just kind of slowly turning into animals, and it's kind of accepted. It's treated as an illness, but kind of an uncurable illness. So we'll have people turning into birds. We'll have people, I don't know, turning into wolves. And the husband of our main couple in this book is turning into a shark. And it's just such a fascinating look at this idea, because you could think, you know, this could take kind of a fantasy route. We could, you know, kind of have the shark man with fantasy powers, but no, it does not go there. It's literally treated as a disease, as an illness. And so when our husband starts, you know, seeing, oh, I'm getting kind of scaly skin, I'm growing kind of these really sharp shark teeth, what is going on? He goes to the doctors, and basically all they can do is help make his transition more comfortable. And we see how he comes to terms with this. We see how his wife comes to terms with this. And it's just kind of a look on marriage and what you do when you get faced with something like this, kind of like an illness that you can't cure, you know? But I thought this was done so well. I went into this book thinking like, what a weird concept. I'm just so intrigued, but didn't know what I'd think about it. And in the end, like this book impacted me so deeply that I still think about this book to this day. Like sometimes I'll just be sitting here and I'll be like thinking about this story and how this couple interacted with one another, and how the husband had to kind of give into this feral side and kind of accept that he was turning into a shark, and then seeing the wife and how she had to come to terms with saying goodbye to her husband. But her husband wasn't dying. He was still going to be around, but he was just going to be a shark. But he was slowly also losing touch with his humanity, so she had to watch him go through this. Such an interesting concept. The writing in this is beautiful. It kind of borders on poetry. Like there are some bits in this that feel more like poetry than prose, but there is a lot of like prose writing, like fictional writing in this. We do also have a little bit of a mixed media situation, because there are certain parts that are written in this screenplay format, kind of a play on our husband character, because, you know, before he starts turning into a shark, he actually teaches a drama class. So just, yeah, a story with a lot of layers, a story that will make you think, but definitely a quicker read, I would say. So that's Shark Heart, and those are the 10 short books that I wanted to talk about today. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let's just fill the comments with more short book recs. So if you have any more short book recs that you want to include, let us all know in the comments. Let's all help each other out. And also, of course, if you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!